What's up, everybody? It's your boy Tru Element 78 in the building with.
Your reigning and defending Mondo Lucha Hall of Famer, and for the first time, cocaine is not a hell of a drug. DX man, Xavier Mustafa.
And today you can call me the infamous Blackheart, the natural Chris Black.
And I think cocaine may still be a hell of a drug based on the contraption that came up in this episode. This is the finale of our review of Viceland's Dark Side of the Ring, Season 2. Of course, this is episode 10, and this covers the final days of Owen Hart, not the life of Owen Hart. That would be a much longer story. He had a very interesting life. He was the youngest of 12 boys. That is a large family. Or 12 siblings, not the 12 boys. 12 siblings. 12 boys would be even more outlandish.
It's too like that never mind.
Stampede Wrestling was the only thing Stu Hart was running the Stampede on.
Yes, we know it was stampeding.
So, yes, this episode covers pretty much the death of Owen Hart and featured a lot of interviews from his wife, Martha Hart, his son, Oja. Oja. That was his name. Oja. I actually looked it up. It's a Canadian name, but it really comes from like Nigeria. It's an African name. I had to go look it up. It's really featured in like Nigeria and Jamaica and Canada, which is a lot of Jamaicans in Canada. So I think Owen Hart was really living that gimmick of the nation of domination in his family life. Try to add a little bit of lightheartedness to this episode because it was a sad episode. For those who don't know, Owen Hart was a professional wrestler. He was a part of pretty much the Hart dynasty, the Hart family. Everybody knows who Bret Hart is. The British Bulldog, Jim Neidhart, he represented all of them. And like I said, he was the youngest of 12 siblings. And he tragically passed away on May 23rd, 1999 at a pay-per-view held in Kemper Arena in Kansas City, Missouri called Over the Edge. I remember where I was during this show. I had actually ordered the pay-per-view for my birthday, which was on May 20th. And so this aired on May 23rd. It was my parents' birthday gift to me, and I got to see something that we haven't seen since, as far as it happening on American television, of somebody dying in the ring, even though we didn't actually get to see it. But I do remember being in my basement. This was right when I had gotten back into watching wrestling. I had started watching wrestling back in November, it was like November or October of 1998. And actually, I think this was the first WWF pay-per-view I had ordered actually since getting back into wrestling. All the other ones I was going by other people's houses to see.
Yeah. That's not a good one to start.
Right. Well, before we get into the tragedy and the episode, like, what do you guys remember about Owen Hart? And were you fans of Owen Hart? I believe Xavier Mustafa was a Bret Hart fan, right?
I was a Bret Hart fan, but I liked Owen too. I thought Owen was always the the black sheep of the family, so I kind of usually always sided with him. So
Yeah. Well, that would be me who's the fan of Bret Hart. And yeah, you can't really be a fan of Bret Hart without recognizing the skills of Owen Hart. I'm not going to say Owen Hart was better than Bret, but I really enjoyed his work. I thought he was an excellent heel. He played the jealous brother really well. And when they joined together to start the Hart Foundation with him, Neidhart, Bulldog, and Pillman, that was just one of my favorite all-time factions, to be honest. He will be missed, definitely, or is missed.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, we're recording this during a very rough week in wrestling, and this episode aired during a very rough week in wrestling. We're recording this the same week that Shad Gaspard tragically passed away. Hana, I cannot pronounce her last name. Japanese wrestler passed away due to suicide. From Shimmer, we had a podcaster, in the community also passed away this week. So it's been a rough week for professional wrestling. And then you have this episode bringing back the memory of, and it's also the anniversary week of Owen Hart's passing. So, like I said, this happened in 1999 on May 23rd. Some of the things they brought up in this episode was how Owen Hart had done the Blue Blazer gimmick when he first came into the WWF, but as time started to change, they kind of felt that the gimmick was becoming a little played out, so they decided to retire the gimmick. And they said that Owen Hart was like a great personality, but he wasn't over the top, so he didn't necessarily fit with the WWE product or WWF product that they were trying to portray. So in 1993, they started trying to figure out a different way for Owen Hart to get over, and they couldn't really come up with anything. So that's when they started putting them with the Hart Foundation and started building up all those different stables and factions and tag teams. Like when you really look at Owen Hart's career in the WWF, they pretty much just turned him into a tag team wrestler until those final years of his life, for the most part.
Well, his feud with Bret Hart, I think they said around 94, 95, when he won like the King of the Ring and he had that awesome match at WrestleMania 10. That was the only time they really pushed him as a singles guy. But then, yeah, after that, like you said, they kind of shoved him in the tag division after that.
Yeah. Another thing they brought up in here was that Owen Hart had all the gifts. They felt like he could be a big star. That's why they gave him that push in 1994. Bret Hart did the honors for him and put him over. And they were kind of off to the races with Owen, but it seemed like they were never going to strap the rocket to him and have him become the top champion or anything like that. But they also felt that Owen Hart wasn't a lifer, and that's been kind of contested and argued by some people who were in the industry. And then they show footage in this episode of Owen Hart actually saying like his goal was to make enough money to get out of the business and just spend time with his family and be with them. And then there's a lot of contention about those statements made by Owen Hart that we'll get into that they didn't get into in the episode. But I do want to basically do a disclaimer right now. I felt that this was one of the weaker episodes of the season, and overall, I didn't really enjoy this season of Dark Side of the Ring as much as I enjoyed the last season. We'll get into that a little bit more later on. But I felt that this Owen Hart episode should have been 2 parts like the Chris Benoit episode was. I felt like there was a lot of things that they did not touch on in here. And we're not even going to touch on everything here because, like I said, we try to keep it to what they talked about in the episode. But that's how I felt. What did you guys think? Do you guys think this could have been a 2-parter episode?
I wouldn't say it was one of the weakest episodes. I think the difference is Owen was so clean cut. It's more tragic, and like he didn't do something like Benoit, like kill his family.
Right.
Like his death was just like truly tragic. There was no drama involved, and maybe that's why it's not as interesting as some of the other episodes. But I definitely think, well, if they would have made it a 2-parter, I feel like the first part would have just glorified his career, and that's probably something that show is not for. So I understand why it was only 1 part because it kind of solely just focused on the death and the aftermath. So yeah, it wasn't as dramatic as the other episodes, but it was informative. I learned a few new things, although, like you said, we had to go through some older interviews and stuff like that to learn some more information.
Yeah. Mustafa?
Yeah, I was basically going to say the same thing Chris Beck was saying. If they did a longer episode, I mean, there's really not much more I don't think they could talk about the accident and his death, but his career.
Well, the only reason I'm saying that is because, like we said, we went to outside sources. We lived through it as well, of just really the dark side of this. I felt like they didn't really get into. The dark side of it was the whole Vince McMahon countersuing Martha Hart over the damages and everything that her and her family essentially went through to get the information that she did finally get, that how it seemed like nobody wanted to take responsibility for what happened that day to Owen Hart. Because Martha Hart wrote a book where she actually goes into a lot more detail that they could have went into. Maybe they didn't want to risk getting sued by the WWF possibly, and they didn't want to include a lot of those different things because it would maybe equate to libel or something like that. So that's the main thing that I mean is that there were a lot of details. Like Martha mentioned in the documentary how after Owen fell and she filed her lawsuit, she filed it in Kansas City, but WWE wanted to move it to Connecticut because they had a law where there's no punitive damages that could be awarded if she won the case and different things like that. More evidence of how the Harts were sabotaging her lawsuit and providing those documents and why her and Bret Hart really fell out. like there was a lot more that they could have touched on. But
Right.
let's get into the actual accident. So when the WWE started to change their programming to the Attitude Era, they didn't really know what to do with Owen Hart. He didn't really like any of the storylines that were given him, which a lot of them dealt with infidelity, and he wasn't with that. He didn't want any type of storyline to make it seem like he was cheating on his wife or being not being faithful to his family. And so what they decided to do was to bring him back as the Blue Blazer and turn it into a comedy gimmick, which originally when he had done it was a serious gimmick. But like I said, they felt like it didn't really fit with the times. When they brought it back, they mainly brought it back to make fun of the wrestler Sting in WCW. And one of the things that Sting in WCW had become known for was descending from the ceiling and beating up all the bad guys and different things like that. What they did with the Blue Blazer, they would have him ascend from the ceiling sometimes, and he basically a bumbling idiot, and he would get beat up or he'd get caught up in his harness or different things like that. So the whole gimmick was pretty much brought back for gags and to make fun of a wrestler in the competing organization. Were you guys a fan of the Blue Blazer gimmick?
I wasn't. I felt they could have did something else with him, but I didn't know all that was kind of going on because that was the time where you know people were getting bent over and under sheets and pillow fights and all kind of ridiculous sexual in nature stuff. And as it was documented that Owen was with that, but I think they still could have found something else for him to do.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. That'll be like them putting that outfit on someone like Daniel Bryan today, being like, "Oh, we've got nothing for him. Let's do this to give him some character." And as we all know, like I was one of those guys that thought that not to get on Daniel Bryan, but I was one of those guys who thought when I saw his work on the Indies, I'm just like, yeah, this guy doesn't have much of a personality. He's one hell of a wrestler, but he would never get over, mainstream. And look at him. So I think that they just didn't know what to do with Owen. Owen had hella charisma. I don't know what the fuck they were talking about. They had nothing for him.
And with that being said, don't ever let Chris Black be your talent scout for your company. He would have passed on Daniel Bryan.
Hey, not to say I would have passed on him. I just said that I don't think he would get over because he's too bland.
Is it?
But I guess to be fair, on the Indies, he never showed that kind of personality. He was just a serious wrestling guy.
It was kind of funny you saying that. If people who've been long time listeners, I remember you saying on the episode that's what they said about you in the beginning.
Oh yeah. Oh, I'm not gonna stray from that. Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna say no names, but one guy says that I'm basically I was very generic.
Who said this?
Money Mark.
Ah, gotcha.
Eminem.
The reason why I only worked for him once. But anyway, this episode ain't about me.
Yeah, always trying to put your damn self over. Anyways, so he was supposed to be a spoof of Sting, and like I said, he would descend from descend from the ceiling. And during that time when he was doing that on television, his wife said that he had a top-notch rigging team, and they had worked with Disney and the Rolling Stones, and even had done rigging for WCW in the past. But on this day, at the Kemper Arena on May 23rd, 1999, they had hired a different rigging team, and this was actually their first time working with them, from how they stated it in the documentary. And then there was some information that found from the outside sources that they had actually contacted Vince Russo. They said that the show had been written already, but they wanted to bring in this new rigging team and see what they had, because they had said they had worked with WCW and they wanted to try out some different stunts and everything further on down the line. So they asked him what's something that they could do to try to show that they were a good rigging team, and he said, well, we could do the descending from the ceiling thing with the blue blazer. And so they decided to do that for the pay-per-view. He was the only one who had a special entrance on this show. So the rigging, the person that rigged Owen Hart that day, his name was Bobby Talbert, and Martha Hart said he should have never been in charge of the rigging that day. How Bobby had sold himself to the WWE was that he had done rigging for WCW and he had worked with Sting and his rigging and different things like that. And the WWE had wanted a new rigging system put into place because they had felt that the system they had in the past was very clunky, because it used a locking carabiner to lower the person down. But once they got down, you had to unlock the carabiner. And usually the person that is suspended like that, they can't unlock themselves, so they kind of need a little bit of assistance. Or they can do it themselves, but they're going to be standing there, and it's going to take a little bit, which anybody who watched WCW back in the day will remember Sting either having to fight with the cable still hanging on from him, or the NWO just standing there looking foolish for about 5 seconds, and then Sting gets to swinging with the bat. So what they decided on was this carabiner that was actually used to hold sailboat sails, and it would unlock under about 6 pounds of pressure, which, for those of you who are familiar with pistols, most handguns or striker-fired pistols fire at around 6 to 5 pounds of pressure. So we all know that that's not a whole lot of pressure.
You know what? Okay, so this is what I'm kind of confused about. Like, I heard, okay, so Vince McMahon wants to use this quick release because he says getting unhinged is kind of clunky. But wasn't that kind of the gimmick? Was that he was kind of bumbling? Like, wouldn't it make sense for him to kind of fumble around and the ref be like, "Here, I'll give you a hand," especially since Owen Hart was the one who says that he should go first rather than the Godfather, which, again, that makes perfect sense, because he didn't want Godfather standing in the ring looking like an idiot while he's unhinging himself. So I don't understand the call from Vince McMahon about, hey, this is clunky. Well, this wasn't a serious character, so there was no need for a quick release.
Right, and one more thing to touch on, and for those of you wondering what that loud sound was, Xavier Mustafa being haunted by the ghost of Christmas past. Actually, I think COVID-19 just kicked in his door. That's what it was. You all right over there? Was that Damascus coming in? Was he coming to eat you?
No, well, never mind. I'm not going to bash the company on the podcast, but some people make some shitty products, and then you gotta adjust so they're not shitty.
So you're talking about WWE?
No,
something he bought that was made in China.
No, this is made in Poland, actually.
Oh, damn Polacks.
But anyway, so Bobby Talbot sold himself like that. But what came out later in the court case is that Martha Hart was 100% correct that he shouldn't have been in charge of rigging anyone, because he had sold himself on being the person who had worked with Sting in WCW. He had done that about 3 or 4 times, but he was never in charge of the rigging. He was always the assistant.
Okay. So this is the one part where I'm kind of, don't take me wrong, I in no way, any shape or form blaming Owen Hart for anything. I'm not doing that. But if it was me, if I'm supposed to descend and they're like, hey, we've got this new gimmick that will release you. No. not doing it. Especially when they said that it's used for sailboats. Like, is Vince McMahon an idiot? Because unless the sailboat mast weighs about 300 pounds, there's no way it can withhold the weight of a man, a grown man.
Well, I'm pretty sure that they didn't disclose that information to Owen Hart that it was used for sailboats. They probably just said it's a new quick system that will get you unhooked quicker,
But
and you can unhook yourself by pulling on this string.
you saw how small that thing is? Like,
Right. And that was one thing that Martha Hart brought up that I felt she kind of contradicted herself in this episode, where she said that, well, one thing to point out is Owen Hart was afraid of heights, but he would do the gimmick where anyways and stuff because, you know, it was putting food in his family's mouth, and, you know, he wouldn't be up there any longer than he needed to be. But in the episode, one of the things she said in the beginning of the episode was that Owen never questioned his safety because he felt that the WWE, this $1 million company, would take care of him. But then when they started talking about the accident, she's like, Owen wouldn't have went out there if he felt it was unsafe or anything, because Owen always questioned everything. And I'm like, so either he trusted the company or he questioned everything. And then,
but
oh, go ahead.
how could you trust a company that but they screwed over your brother?
Well,
I wouldn't trust them with shit.
Well, that didn't have
especially not my life.
Well, that didn't have anything to do with safety. But one of the other things was that, and Martha said she doesn't know if they did or they didn't. And I've heard another story where apparently they did a rehearsal. And she said she doesn't know if they did or if they didn't. And if they did do it, did they use the lock and carabiner and then switch to the quick release later on? Or did they actually use the new quick release? Which it doesn't make sense to do a rehearsal if you're not going to use the equipment that you plan to use in the actual performance. So
that's one of the things that I heard. I had mixed recollection. Some people were saying that Owen turned down rehearsing, and some other people, like Vince McMahon, said that he did.
Well, here's the story that I heard, and it was that since Owen was afraid of heights, he didn't want to do the gimmick anyway. So what he did was he actually left the arena because he's like, if they can't find me, they'll just drop the whole thing. And so he went somewhere outside of the arena, and nobody could find him. And then finally Vince McMahon called him and was like, you get back here or you're fired, and do this rehearsal. And so he came back, and they did the rehearsal. So I think that's where the confusion comes in on if he did or if he didn't, and if they used the one gimmick or if they didn't use the other gimmick. And I'm about to go over here and smack Xavier Mustafa. You got all types of noises, pings, and dings going on over there, old man.
I was drinking water. It was my ice. Jesus.
But you know what? Well, let me not interrupt you because I got something to say about how that harness was hooked up. But go ahead.
Okay, so what ends up happening is that Jimmy Corderas is in the ring, and he's clearing the ring of debris from a hardcore match that happened before Owen Hart was set to go one-on-one with the Godfather for the Intercontinental Championship. And so they're showing a promo package for the match that's coming up, and they're getting ready for the introduction of the Blue Blazer, which I think delay saved the WWE's everything when it came to this, because if he's coming from the ceiling, I don't think that they would want you to miss any of that on the pay-per-view. But I think the delay WWE had at this time, and I don't know how long it was, if it was 3 seconds or 5 seconds or whatever it was.
7.
Okay, 7-second delay saved them, where Owen Hart was placed out over the ring while the promo was playing, and that's when he actually fell. Like, it was like instant. I don't think that he got lowered at all. They said it was from a height of 80 feet that he hit the ring, which I didn't do my math equation on how fast that is. But Jimmy Corderas is in the ring, and he is, like I said, kicking debris out of the ring. And he says all of a sudden he feels something brush past his face, and he's holding on to the rope. And then the rope just bounces back, and it jams his hand. And he's like, what the hell was that? And he turns, and he sees Owen laying there in the ring. And people who were in attendance at the show that night, they said that they actually heard Owen yelling, like, look out And so they said that like the last thing this is where Jim Cornette actually teared up. I think Jim Cornette was the MVP of this season for the Dark Side of the Ring, but he just lost it in the episode right here because he's like, this man is falling to what he pretty much knows is certain death, and the only thing on his mind was making sure that nobody else got hurt. And he said it was, I didn't write down the quote, but he said it was an unnecessary, stupid stunt that didn't need to happen.
Right.
And
he's right.
And so all of this is happening, like I said, during that delay, and them showing the promo package. When they come back to actually do the entrance and show it on television, they don't show the ring or anything like that. They just start panning the crowd. And you don't hear any commentary, you don't hear anything. And this isn't what they show in the episode. I still have this pay-per-view on VHS. So they're just panning the crowd for like a minute, and you're like, what's going on? And then the commentary comes in, and it's JR and Jerry the King Lawler, and they're letting you know, like, we got big trouble out here. And you're like, okay, like, I thought, where's the introduction? And he's like, JR is just letting everybody know that what's going on is very serious. It's not a part of the performance. It's not a part of the show. And that something bad happened to Owen Hart and that he fell in the ring. And as a kid, I'm like, okay, he felt like, what's going on? Like, I was thinking maybe a fan that ran in the ring or something crazy that happened. Because this was around the time where a lot of fans were hopping the railing for some reason. And, yeah, they just keep going back to the crowd, and JR is still just telling everybody that there's a really bad emergency that's going on, and they're not going to show what's going on in the ring or anything like that. Eventually, I guess they get Owen Hart out of the ring, and they continue on with the show while he's wheeled off to the hospital. And that was
Was it with his blood on the mat?
Well,
and broken boards.
Well, we'll get into that because like I said, I went and pulled out the VHS, and that blood that they showed in the police photos, that wasn't Owen Hart's blood. That was from Sunday Night Heat, actually. The Brood had done a bloodbath earlier in the night.
They don't change their mats?
Well, it's fake blood. What you gonna change the mat for?
For the optics?
Well, they didn't do it like that back in the day. That's more of a recent thing.
And also, you don't normally look at the ring from the top down. You wouldn't have noticed that on television. Because I remember after they said he had fallen and everything and watching the show, I was looking for, like, if he fell from, like, the ceiling, like, there should be blood in the ring and not being able to really see it. Also, you know, is a VHS and standard definition televisions back in the day, so can't really see too much anyway. But the show goes on. They have, like, 3 more matches. And then JR comes on and he lets everybody know, he lets the world know pretty much that Owen Hart has died. And in this episode, they said that they kept telling JR to give updates, and that nobody, and JR's like, I haven't received any updates, so what's the update? And Kevin Dunn tells him Owen Hart is dead, and you're back in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And that's when JR lets everybody know that Owen Hart has died. He said that was the only thing he could come up with in those 10 seconds of preparation. And I was like, that is a shitty position to be in.
Okay. You know what? I've gone on record saying that this show should have stopped. But this is the dirty shit that just happened, what you just described. Kevin Dunn was insensitive as hell and just told JR, number 1, a man has died, and number 2, you got 10 seconds before you have to let the crowd know. Number 1, the only person that should have made that statement to the crowd and to the viewing audience should have been Vince McMahon himself. He should have walked his ass out there and said, folks, something tragic has happened. Owen Hart has passed. I'm sorry. We will refund your money, but this show needs to stop. And Vince would have looked like the best guy ever. if he had done that. But no, he was thinking about his dollars.
Well, normally I don't defend Vince McMahon because Vince McMahon has kind of been an asshole this entire series. Um, but I have to look at it from because I mean, even at Legacy Pro, when some BS is going on, you're just trying to run around and figure out what happened, what you're gonna do about it, and sometimes stuff is just happening too fast. So we don't know like how much time was passed from the point where they realized that okay he was dead to the point where they went back live on the air. That could have been 2 minutes, could have been 5 minutes, could have been 10 minutes.
Yeah, but still, it's just like I guess I would be thinking damage control. Number one, someone was going to get sued, and more than likely it was going to be WWE. So why not get ahead of the situation, go out and say, "I'm sorry, folks." Make a show of good faith. Refund the money, showing that it's not about the money, that you actually care about this individual. Act like you got some fucking humanity in you, and show the man some respect. But no, like I said, I 100% I do not disagree with that show going on as planned. I understand the show must go on, but I don't know if they figured death when that saying was created.
One of the most interesting things about this, and they didn't bring this up in the documentary, I wish they would have, was that for the most part from the fall, Owen Hart's like anatomy like was fine. He suffered no head trauma, anything like that. What happened was that his main aorta separated on impact, and he had a huge, I think it was like a 3 or 4 inch laceration on his arm, and it went down to the bone on his left arm, I believe. So, like I said, not all of that blood was from Owen Hart. A little bit of it may have pooled, but it wasn't all from him. They did actually do DNA testing on the mat and found that there was some fake blood, but there was a little bit of blood from Owen Hart also out there in the ring. And there were broken boards as well. You guys ever had to wrestle on some broken boards? And how hard is it to break boards?
Yes, I've worked where a board has broken. It's not fun because you expect that the wrestling ring, the mat, be nice and solid and firm. But the boards don't even have to be broken per se. If the boards are loose, you can feel that, and it feels uneven, and it makes running the ropes hard. It makes moving around hard. And more than likely, there's been plenty of times where, you knew that there was some board separation or whatever, and you just avoid that spot.
I've wrestled in it all. It sucks. That's all I can really say about it.
Are different rings, are the boards always the same thickness and size? Or are they? I know the rings sizes are different, so I know it's different lengths. But are they usually like the same thickness for every ring, or do some people cheap out?
I trained in a ring that used to use plywood. Now they've gone to like do a 2x4s or I don't know, Mustafa. What's the size? Because you guys own a ring.
I don't know the size, but the same thickness for the most part in a lot of newer rings. Usually the difference will be the length of them. So sometimes you'll have rings that will go the entire length of the ring. And sometimes you'll have some that will go halfway the length of the ring, and then there's a bar in the middle of it. So basically you're just supporting from one side of the ring to the middle. The middle is supported by itself, and then on the other side is the opposite.
That sounds stiff as hell. That sounds like it's no fun.
Well, I mean, sometimes you gotta remember that some people run shows outside, and the boards sometimes will get wet. So over time they warp, so they're not exactly fitting 100% like they used to. So that's where you get some uneven boards every now and then.
Okay, I just have to ask because, like I said, they did more matches after Owen Hart's fall, and people had to go out there and wrestle in that. And Vince, they said the direction they were given was just to avoid that spot.
Yeah, I will say that it's not impossible to work in a ring that's got some compromised wood. Like I said, you just avoid the spot. But you just have to have good ring awareness to know that you can't work in that one area. It's not impossible. It's just a little difficult.
And so after all of that had happened, and before I guess they knew that Owen had passed away, Martha says Vince McMahon had called her at home, and it was at night, and it said unknown caller. And normally when it says unknown caller, she said that was pretty much the calling card of Owen calling her to check in. So she answered the phone, was like, "Hey, Owen," and he's like, "No, it's Vince." And she was like, "Oh, he was a prankster," and so she thought that he was pranking her, saying it was Vince McMahon. He's like, "No, this is really Vince McMahon. There's been an accident. Owen has fallen." And Martha had all these questions, and Vince kept saying, "I don't know, I don't know." And she's like, "Well, I need to speak to somebody who does know." And Vince tells her that somebody will call her soon. So she said,
I mean, you
"Oh,
you think Owen has fallen, and you think, oh, he was on the top rope and he had a tumble outside the ring, is probably what she was thinking, because she's like, oh, is he okay? What hospital is he at?
Right. And so then later, a doctor called Martha, and he was basically asking her, was she home alone? And she was saying yes. And was she sitting down? And she's and all these different types of questions. And he's like, well, I really would like to give you this information in person so we can fly you out. And she's like, Doc, stop beating around the bush. Just give it to me straight, pretty much. And he told her that he tried everything that he could, but he wasn't able to save Owen. And she said she just falls over and starts yelling, "No, no, 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 no." And she says, she's like, all the no's in the world wasn't going to change the situation or bring Owen back. And Oja, her son, he was playing in the basement with one of the neighbors, and the neighbor came and told him, "Your mom is crying." And he's like, "Why is she crying?" And the neighbor's like, "I don't know." So he goes up to see why his mom is crying, and he can't really get any answers out of her because she's just so gone in the moment. He says some time passes, and eventually it's bedtime for him and his sister Athena. And the mom takes him upstairs and takes him, I guess, into her room and lets him know, like, your father has died. And he says they all slept in the same bed that night, but nobody probably really even slept. Like, I couldn't imagine getting that phone call about, like, any of my parents dying, and especially like being away from home, and you have no ability to go and see, and nobody has any real information for you or anything like that.
Yeah, man. No one wants to have that conversation or that phone call. I mean, I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine.
Have you ever received a phone call about anybody that you guys wrestle with getting hurt or injured or passing away, that, like, unexpectedly, or being hospitalized?
Just someone who died, but that's a story for another day.
I mean, I remember not this past Royal Rumble, but the Royal Rumble before that. That was in Phoenix, and we woke up. It was, I don't know if it was the day of the Royal Rumble or the day before, where NXT was running, but we woke up and it was me and Chris Black's arch nemesis. We were sharing a room, and he was like, "Hey, Will just died," and Will was another promoter that was in the area that had passed away. So yeah, found it out via Facebook. That was pretty sad. I mean, usually Facebook is the way a lot of people communicate nowadays. Or every once in a while you get a text message like, "Hey, so and so passed away," and
Yeah,
it
I
sucks.
never got that phone call.
Hmm. And so they said that Martha actually had an open casket funeral for Owen, and she said thousands of people showed up. So many people showed up. They actually had loudspeakers and screens outside so that people could see the wedding, all different types of wrestlers, and everybody showed up. She said she couldn't believe the outpouring of love and support that her family was receiving at that time. And she said when she walked in and saw Owen, she could not contain herself or control herself because she said pretty much said he looked terrible. Like she didn't even really recognize him in the casket. And she said Bret Hart pretty much bear hugged her and told her, "No, you got to go face this." And she said the only thing that really gave her any comfort in that moment was Owen's hair because that was the same. And so she just was rubbing his hair while he was in the casket. And she also said from that day she pretty much vowed to have the day of reckoning for her husband and to get to the bottom of what happened. And her son also acknowledged that after his dad passed away, after Owen died, that his mother pretty much became a fighter from that point on. And so what ended up happening, I already kind of addressed it, is that Martha sued the WWE in Kansas City, and the WWE wanted to move the lawsuit to Connecticut because no punitive damages could be awarded in Connecticut. And Martha also makes a point that some of the family supported her decision to sue the WWF, and some of them didn't support the decision to sue WWF, mainly because they come from the wrestling pedigree that you don't sue the most powerful man in professional wrestling if that's your bread and butter. And so she said family members were stealing her court documents and different evidence and giving it to the WWF so that they could defend against it and everything. And it just kind of became too much. And pretty much to this day, she's pretty much estranged from the Hart family still.
That's pretty dirty, because you would think that in this time, people are supposed to, come together to help you. Like, okay, you hear when Eddie Guerrero died, how his wife was able to lean on Benoit's wife, and everyone had somebody to comfort them and help them through this. It seems like everyone just kind of left her to fend for herself.
You know what? It's always going to be like that. Like, I don't care who it is. There's always, when somebody passes away, there's always going to be people looking to take advantage. There's going to be people feeling like they've owed something. There's somebody that's going to be, salty about the situation and stuff like that. So it's just like any other family drama when somebody passes away. Of course, you had, like I said, like they had Brett trying to cash in and, you know, get all his, not royalties, but film and stuff like that. And then when he didn't get it, he started acting funny,
Yeah, he was. Yeah, I kind of thought that was very. I learned that on a separate interview. I thought that was kind of tasteless for Brett to try to tack on. Oh, in your lawsuit, let me get my footage too. It's just like, Brett, this ain't about you.
Right.
So I already mentioned some of the information that came out about how the rigger didn't actually have the experience that he claimed that he had. They show some of the police photos. We already mentioned one of them where it was a view from the actual catwalk that Owen Hart pretty much fell from down into the ring. And you get to see the height from which he fell and how high up he was, literally able to touch the ceiling of the arena. And then she said the thing that they showed was that carabiner that we spoke about earlier, that this small little carabiner that was meant for sailboats to hold back the actual sails of the boat was the only thing that was supporting a 240-pound man from being suspended in the air down to the ring. And that all it takes was 6 pounds of pressure to open that thing up.
I was listening to, was it Bruce Pritchard? He was saying how the harness that Owen was wearing was very restrictive on him, so it was kind of hard for him to breathe. And he said that the person who was, you said his name, that was kind of rigging him up, he said he heard Owen like take a deep breath, and then he heard the mechanism unlock, and it was over after that. Like, it was hard for him to breathe, so he's trying to catch his breath hanging there, and he tried to, take a deep breath, and that's all it took for it to just release.
Yeah, I was trying to think, has anybody come from the ceiling since then in WWE? I feel like there has been one entrance from the ceiling in WWE
Nope.
since.
Nope. The only thing remotely is like Triple H, but I mean he was on a platform that lowered. That's it. Everybody cut that out. Every wrestling promotion cut that out at that point.
And I guess at the time, everyone didn't think it was nothing because Sting did it. I mean, Sting made it look easy.
Sting was doing it top speed too. He wasn't just
Yeah.
and we all
And there you go. WWE got jealous,
and we
and
all
they were just like, "Oh, we want to do that too."
and we all remember the iconic entrance from the sky with pretty much Shawn Michaels zip lining down to the ring at WrestleMania.
Right. And it's just like, so was Vince McMahon gonna let some second-rate person rig Shawn Michaels up for that?
I just think about all the stunts since then, mainly involving Shane McMahon. It's like Shane McMahon's been trying to get as close to that 80 feet fall as he possibly can ever since then. He got the fall off Titantron with Steve Blackman, the dives off the Hell in a Cell.
Man,
So I don't know.
It's not worth it.
no, it's not. Like you said, that wrestling. I understand that there's glitz and glamour, and there's smoke and mirrors and all that shit. But you know what pro wrestling doesn't need? People repelling from the ceiling.
So the actual court case, they reached a settlement with the WWF. They paid out $18 million to Martha Hart. She says it was never about the money. It was about bringing the people to justice that were responsible for the death of her husband, which I guess you can say that still hasn't happened to this day. She says pretty much the one thing, like I'm reading kind of between the lines, that she can hold against them to make them accountable for what happened is that she refused to ever give the WWE the right to put her husband in the WWF Hall of Fame. She says I'm not going to let them have that. They can't have him. And even her son, his daughter wasn't featured as much in this episode, so I don't know where she sits with it, but I know the son also said that they can't have that. Martha actually went on to start an organization in her husband's name that builds houses for low-income families and single mothers, and all of those bear his name. Owen Hart is in the Sports Hall of Fame as well, and a lot of other people in here were addressing that, how he should be in every Hall of Fame, including the WWF Hall of Fame. What are your opinions, or what have your opinions changed? Do you believe that he should be in the WWF Hall of Fame and that Martha should let that go and allow him to be put in there? Or do you feel that it's justified that she's not going to allow the WWF to have his name?
I was strongly against her not letting them into the Hall of Fame until I seen it out of her own mouth. When she heard it out of her own mouth, when she said, "I'm not going to let them put him in the Hall of Fame," the company that basically killed him. And when she said it, I was like, you know what? It actually kind of makes sense. Okay, I'm cool with it now.
Piggybacking off of that, not only should the company that is responsible for his death not put him in the Hall of Fame, which in reality the Hall of Fame, I don't want to say it means nothing, but they don't have a set of standards and shit like everyone else's Hall of Fame. But my main reason for agreeing with Martha that they should not induct him in the Hall of Fame is because the WWE should not profit a dime for it. You know that if Owen Hart goes into the Hall of Fame, tickets will be sold, DVDs, footage. They're going to be making not a killing, but they're going to make a profit off of Owen Hart's name. And I don't think that unless they plan on donating every dollar, every cent to the Owen Hart Foundation, then no. Yeah, I absolutely think that he should not.
You know that T-shirt will be made. He'll be that unlockable character in the video game.
Right, exactly. So yeah, I agree with. At first, I used to think that Martha was being selfish for not wanting him to be in the Hall of Fame. But look, we can honor Owen without WWE's Hall of Fame. Like seriously, I mean, if she can commission, well, I don't know. Does she have access to his footage? I doubt it, because like couldn't she put together like a memorial, best of Owen Hart or in memory of Owen Hart type of DVD or something. But I guess if she doesn't own the footage, then she can't do that.
And you brought up a good point, and to play devil's advocate, I think that would be the way to do it. Like, I feel that he should be in the WWF Hall of Fame, but only under the circumstances that you said, that WWF doesn't, anything that they make that has Owen's image, name, sayings, likeness, anything like that, she gets royalties from that, and or they're donated to her nonprofit.
Because, okay, this may be just pure speculation on my part, but let's just be real. The only reason why they reconciled with the Ultimate Warrior is because they want to profit from it. Triple H probably got in Vince's ear, like, we can make mad money off of this if we just, shake his hand and, bury the hatchet.
So are you saying they killed the Ultimate Warrior because him dying right after they inducted him made them a lot more money than ever apologizing?
Hey, I'm not trying to dust off a tinfoil hat or nothing, but but no, I'm saying that money's a big motivator to burying the hatchet. So I truly think that that's probably the only reason why they let the Ultimate Warrior in the Hall of Fame, because they knew they were going to profit off of that.
Well, they also do.
Look at Bruno Sammartino.
They also do pay the people to show up, and that's why a lot of the people agree to show up anyways. Hey, this is a $10,000 payday for you. And Bruno Sammartino didn't want to go in the Hall of Fame. He didn't give a damn about the ring. He left the ring or whatever. He just did it to get paid. What's Angel Armani's favorite saying?
Right, whores.
So, wrapping up this episode, because that's pretty much where the episode ends. What were your thoughts on the overall season of Dark Side of the Ring?
Let me just say one last quick tidbit. One thing that I was interested in finding out was that obviously there's footage of this. And I'm not trying to be all bizarre and be like, they need to release that footage or anything, or wanting to see it. But I heard that the video does exist, and it's in the Stanford office in a vault, quote unquote vault or whatever. And it's labeled "Do Not View, Broadcast, or Copy." And they said that it's that, and also Droz's accident is labeled the same thing. So they've got all this footage, and they're not showing it. So that whole discussion that we had, that we think that maybe Martha has a copy of it, I don't think so, because they can't risk her losing it, copying it, distributing it. I don't think she has a copy at all.
Oh,
has she seen it? Probably. She probably has seen it, but she has no access to it.
I'm sure it was played in court. I'm sure she's seen it.
Yeah, but she doesn't own it.
Or maybe she does, and there's the threat of lawsuit, like severe. She probably forfeits that $18 million plus another $18 million if she does ever allow that to leak out to anywhere. Right. I'm sure she has. If she has the Caribbean, I'm sure she has the footage as well. And her son is a lawyer. He went to law school following all of this. One interesting thing, this is something that wasn't discussed in the episode that I did want to throw out there. The interesting thing about this is also something that Chris Jericho said in the episode, and I'm going to bring up something Triple H has brought up since then. Like, Chris Jericho mentioned, if Owen Hart survives Over the Edge, all the talent that came into the WWE later on in 1999, just like 3 months later, you had Chris Jericho show up in the WWF. You had Chris Benoit show up in the WWF. You had Dean Malenko show up in WWF. 3 years later, you got Brock Lesnar coming into the WWF. And another interesting factoid is that one of Owen Hart's last matches was actually 2 weeks before his death against a young Kurt Angle on a dark match. And that footage exists somewhere as well.
I was wondering that. I was like, because Kurt Angle was around and they didn't cross paths?
There's pictures, actually, of the match. And I think it was one of Kurt's first 3 matches in the WWF at the time.
Damn.
So just not doing this stupid stunt or hiring the right people, Owen Hart's career could have been set on a whole different trajectory from that blue blazer gimmick that he was doing. He could have went back to being Owen Hart and had some of the all-time probably greatest matches in wrestling history following.
God damn it, Vince.
And then another tidbit is something that Triple H has brought up before, is that the gimmick of the game was never meant for Triple H. It was actually meant to be Owen Hart's gimmick.
Can you imagine that?
So,
It's time to play the game.
well, to go along with that
Woo!
though, you got Kurt Angle, like I just said, all these people coming in, and Owen Hart is supposed to be given the gimmick that Triple H was given, and we all know the push that Triple H was given at that time with that game gimmick.
Damn it.
So that
Maybe
also
some alternate universe. Owen Hart survived, and he was the biggest wrestling star.
right, and then also, I guess I'm throwing more information out there. Other things that weren't in the episode is how they talked about Martha never really liked the wrestling business, even though she married a wrestler, and
Right.
and so it's kind of a he say she say thing on people who were close to Owen, on whether or not Owen, like I said, they show footage in here of him saying that his goal is to spend more time with his family and be with them. But of course, his wife is filming that footage. If he's just delivering lip service to her to keep her happy because he knows how she feels about the business, or if he was planning on actually being a lifer and doing the wrestling thing, and especially, like I said, that career resurgence that could have happened, just him living 3 months longer and seeing all these people start coming into the WWF.
But he may not have been a lifer, but Owen Hart was not miserable in the business. He loved the business. But like you said, he just wasn't a lifer. He was all about his family. He wanted to make money and get out, which there's nothing wrong with that.
Right. So you guys got anything else to say about this episode?
I don't know if this was a strong enough episode to be the finale. I don't want to say they should have flipped it, but maybe they should have did the Benoit thing last, and maybe Owen Hart should have been first. But I don't know. I enjoy the series. I look forward to season 3 if and when they do that. Viceland, do season 3. So I really enjoyed this series. I've learned so much more. I love learning more and more about wrestling history. So please make more episodes so we can review them.
You love learning more and more about cocaine.
Well, I got to live vicariously through other people.
I don't know. I really don't have much to say. I got covered everything. Yeah, season 3.
Well, what were your thoughts on this overall season?
It was trash.
For real.
The bookend episodes were by far the best. The first one and the last.
I think
everything in between was just filler.
Herb Abrams was my favorite.
Yeah, I think these seasons have themes. I think like the first season was more about folks getting killed and murdered and shit. The second season was all about that cocaine.
Actually, I'll take
that back. I'll take that back. The New Jack episode was great.
That was the only one that was actually like entertaining, like haha funny. Herb Abrams
was entertaining. He's greased up, covered in cocaine, chasing hookers. Nobody knows how this man died.
Jumping out of windows. Listen. Like we said, themes. Cocaine is a hell of a drug.
Like I said it during the Herb Abrams episode. Fuck the Hulk Hogan movie. I want to see a Herb Abrams movie.
Everybody talk about these wrestlers that be screwing rats. Events be screw more wrestlers than the wrestlers screw rats. We've learned that, and you can't trust them.
So, what is a story that you would like to see told in season 3? If you had one request, what story do you want to see for season 3?
You're gonna hit us with just one?
Just one.
Ah, damn it. Honestly, I think they need to cover China. Well, I don't know about that. Because you can't mention all the porn shit.
You can.
Yeah, you can. They just, after the episode aired, they actually did a whole documentary about porn in the age of COVID-19.
I mean, they can show it.
I think that they probably should get in depth with the whole China situation and how basically she just kind of spiraled out of control and led to her death.
Well, you could say pretty much shunned from the only company she had known and dumped because of it. and then given all she knew was fame and that, and then she was pretty much blacklisted from the industry until TNA gave her a shot.
Everyone's posting these memes about my plans, and then 2020, I saw one where they showed my plans and they showed Triple H with China, and then under 2020 was a picture of Stephanie McMahon.
Basically, I'm gonna go with Hogan. I think there's a lot of stories to be told about Hogan.
And they could make a whole season about Hogan.
I just want an ECW episode.
Oh,
Like just around that entire thing. You think about how many people have died from that were in ECW from when it was around.
you know, a more recent thing that they can probably. Oh, goddamn it! I forgot the chick's name. There was another woman that died maybe a few years ago. Ashley.
Oh yeah. Ashley Navarro, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. The most interesting one is the one that you said, China. I think that they will cover China in the next season, but it's also kind of hard to tell China's story when the majority of those people are still in the WWF, because even though Walt Whitman isn't technically on the show, I think he does.
Sean Waltman.
Oh yeah, what did I say? Walt Whitman. Sean. Yeah, Sean. I think because of that induction, he's still under contract with the WWE. So I don't know if he can appear.
Well, then the next one that they should do is Chris Candido. Like, definitely they need to do Chris Candido, because the way that the manner that he died was tragic.
Yeah, Chris Candido would be a good one. Chris Candido, China said, yeah, those would be two really good ones. I think the China one would be the most interesting. It'd just be more interesting on getting the people who can actually come and discuss China, basically, though, that actually like knew her, that are names in the industry.
Yeah, that's why I think China would be a little difficult, because, like you said, X-Pac really can't say much. You know damn well Triple H ain't saying a word.
Road Dogg can't say anything. Billy Gunn can. He'd be like the only person that they could probably get. Goldust was around, so he could probably appear as well. Actually, a Goldust one. Let's do one on Dustin Rhodes.
What's the tragedy there? Or the dark side?
Well, it doesn't have to be tragic. The dark side.
Well, what's the dark side?
All the drug use and the suicide stuff and all of that. Like, he came out on the other side, but
see, I'm not aware of all that.
Yeah, that man went through the hell and back. Shoot, they could do the Jake the Snake story.
But see, his story's been told, I feel like.
Yeah, but not the way Viceland would do it. But hopefully season 2, my one request for season 2, besides the stories that they could tell, is give us more content. Like, quit recycling like certain segments in the show and give us more info. I felt like season 1 had more detail on things that happened. I felt season 1 was darker. I felt like season 2 felt rushed. Like they were like we addressed in the Hawk and Animal episode, and the Road Warriors episode, that they were getting simple information wrong that could be fixed with a quick Google search of what's the Legion of Doom? What cartoon is that from? Like, you can't mess. If you want us to trust you as a source of our information, you can't get simple things like that wrong.
I got one more submission. See, that's why you couldn't just give me one. Brian Pillman.
Okay, I wonder if that story's been told to death too, but I wouldn't mind watching it again.
Well, they did the Montreal Screwjob, and they did the Brawl for All. So this isn't. Remember, these stories aren't necessarily for people like us.
True that. Yeah, Brian Pillman, I think, should be good, because that's another guy that died way too soon.
Listen, and then we can talk about some episodes they can do about pieces of crap. Like they can do an Enzo Amore one.
Maybe that'll be the next season, is just shitty folks.
They're gonna do one on your hero, Xavier Mustafa, the greatest man alive.
He'll take that as a compliment.
The tragic fall. You know what though? That'll be a good episode because they'll talk about all these people talk about how much of an asshole he is.
Ooh, thinking of Hearts, maybe they should bring up Teddy Hart.
That might actually be on it. Hey, Alberto Del Rio.
Oh, how the mighty have fallen.
But anyways, if you guys don't have anything else, you guys can give out your social medias. Actually, one more thing before you do that. So this season on a scale of 1 to 10.
1, no, I give it a 5 overall.
I'm actually going to give it a 7 because I actually got choked up in the first episode. I don't know. I think yes, the first season had like his high spots, but I think I enjoyed the second season a little bit more. Maybe because of all the cocaine, but
That you took while viewing.
no, I love hearing stories about how
Yeah.
that shit makes you do fucked up things.
Yeah. Well, I give it a 6. And like you said, episode 1 kind of got me choked up, and episode 2, I mean not episode 2, but this final episode on Heart got me a little choked up. But that's mainly the thing that separated those 2 episodes from all the other episodes. They actually had crime scene photos, and for the Chris Benoit episode, those photos were haunting.
Yeah.
They should have some crime scene photos for that New Jack, but no, they didn't.
The man's a walking crime scene.
Yeah, so I think the bookend episodes had those crime scene photos that just like stuck with you, and especially Benoit. And, oh yeah, there was one more thing I want to touch on Heart thing too. There's one more thing. When Martha was talking about taking her kids up to the catwalk, as her kids, I don't know what her state of mind would have been, but I would have been like, Mom, I'm not going up there with you.
Right? Like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to allow you to. You might want to jump and take us with you. So
yeah. Oh, and then that was also one more thing also that we forgot to mention. On that day that Owen Hart fell, I had always heard the rumor, and they didn't bring it up on the episode, that there could have been 3 people that died that day. It could have been the referee, it could have been Owen Hart, and it could have been this midget wrestler by the name of Max Mini, who they had originally contacted to ride down on Owen Hart's back down to the ring.
But at the last second, they couldn't because it was just too difficult to set up. Get all their ducks in a row, so to speak.
It was like, we put you on here, both of y'all. Y'all not even gonna get strapped up for your fault.
The interesting thing is, imagine what if that would have actually saved Owen Hart's life, though, that they couldn't.
He landed on the midget?
No, well, no, no, but maybe the ringer's like, well, this contraption isn't strong enough to hold 2 people. And then they have to go use the actual locking mechanism.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Like we think about it that it could have been tragic, but that could have actually been the thing that could have saved Owen Hart's life. It's one of those what ifs.
I hope the guy who set the rigging shit up, I hope he feels like absolute shit.
I mean, well, you know what? This episode going to be 2 hours long. Let me shut up.
We just hit an hour. But
I just want to know, if you've been an assistant all this time, how did you not know that wasn't gonna work?
That's why I said he must feel like shit. Because come on, you're supposed to know your equipment.
Yeah, you should. You terrible at your job, dude. I hope you ain't do no more after that.
You had one job.
The funniest thing is he's still been working. He worked on the Maze Runner. He worked on the Fate of the Furious.
The fuck? I guess there must be a shortage of good riggers in the business, or riggers. Period. I don't know about good.
He worked on the Fate of the Furious, Fast 9, Maze Runner, Fast 5.
Yeah, but was he the assistant to show what not to do?
Says he's a stuntman himself now, so. I don't know how you don't go to jail. Unless it was a slap on the wrist jail sentence.
See,
I didn't look that
okay,
up.
you just brought up something else. Okay, real quick. So I don't understand, and someone else brought this up. I don't understand how the cops didn't shut that down. The whole show, because like someone said, that's a crime scene. There's a lot of forensic evidence that they probably should have been looking at right after it happened. They should have shut the show down.
Well, by the time they would have got there, it would have been compromised anyway because the next match was in the ring.
True that.
Well, yeah. Well, all right. Go ahead and give out your social medias.
You can catch me at Xavier Mustafa on Facebook and on the Twitter. You can also catch my other solo podcast, XM Cinema, wherever you get your podcast fix. And you can also follow those social medias at XM Cinema on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
And you can catch me at The Natural Chris Black on Facebook and on Instagram, and at _natural_CB on Twitter.
And you can obviously catch us wherever you get your podcast from. So that's iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you get them from. Be sure to subscribe to Saturday Night Slamcasters. Right now, you're here on YouTube. Be sure to leave us a like, leave us a comment. Make sure you smash that bell so that you're notified whenever we upload new content. Following this series, our next series is going to be covering WWE's The Last Ride series, where The Undertaker talks about pretty much his career, pretty much the final days of his career, which hasn't necessarily ended as we're recording this just yet. His last match was that Boneyard match. So they cover everything from his WrestleMania performance to when he actually plans to walk away from wrestling. So you got that to look forward to following this. You can find me over on Twitter at SlamcasterTE78. And you can also find us over there on the Facebook at Saturday Night Slamcasters, or you can search hashtag Come Get Slammed. Other than that, we up out of here. Holla at your boys. Peace. Come get slammed.